Hi, everybody. It's Alex Jarett with Technology Executives Club and Technology Executives Review. I'm really happy to introduce David Williamson. David, how are you?
Doing well, Alex. Thanks for having me here.
Pleasure to have you. David is one of our new Board of Advisor members. And first of all, namaste, David. Thank you for joining the Board of Advisors. We're really grateful to have you involved. Dave, you're the CIO of Abzena, which I looked up and we talked about it before. It's a really cool company. You're like a private label pharmaceutical drug manufacturer, right? You're the company,
Yeah,
correct?
manufacturing lab work. So we work with your brand name companies to small couple scientists in a lab, helping them move their new therapies through the approval and development cycles.
Oh, I didn't realize that part. So you actually
Yeah.
shepherd so you could have this small lab and you go, hey, Eureka, I figured it out. Now give it to you guys, and then you guys help them go through the
Yeah, scale it up.
FDA or whatever it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, optimize the manufacturing process, scale it up to make material to support clinical trials, toxicology testing, etc. And then help them prepare everything they need for their FDA or other regulator approvals. Yeah, absolutely.
I get it. So when I come to you with Dave, I want to make a pickleball CBD cola drink or hydration drink with CBD. You could do it, right? For
Well, I guess
pickleball.
we're more focused on the biologics set of it. So, what tends to be injectables and or
Oh,
infusions. So, vaccines, those sort of things. But no, I can put you in touch with some of our competitors. I might be able to help you on
that
that.
could do
So,
it. Well, let me invent it first, and then I'll
all
come to
right,
you.
very good.
Because I think someone's gonna, if they haven't already done, they're gonna do that. It's gonna be a big
Sure.
market. So I want to go through your background first for everybody because you got such a great background. First of all, I think we talked about this once before, but I was reminded of it. Thank you for your service, by the
Yeah,
way.
thanks. You're welcome.
Yeah, first of all, and you were in the, God, I'm blanking out here. I'm trying to find it. Hang on. You were in the you were a communications officer in the U.S. Army, and did you
Yes.
toured, as I remember, right? You actually did
Yes.
tour.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in other places. So served with an artillery unit in South Korea,
Oh, geez.
served in outside Savannah, Georgia, where I was deployed to the Middle East for Desert Shield, Desert Storm. So we're
Okay,
in
so
like
you
the
were
midst
really,
of
yeah.
the 35-year reunion on that to give my age away a little. And the Desert Training Center out in Southern California. I spent as an instructor 2 tours. So I wound up doing a whole lot of things during my 4 years. So it was a great experience.
That's great. Well, I really do appreciate you doing that. We need people like you to do stuff like that for us. So, but then you jumped from there. I was looking at your educational background. So you were in the ROTC. That's how you got into, that's what you
Yes.
were doing in college. So you actually had a B, this kind of explains some of my questions. You had a BS in chemistry.
Yes.
So you were in chemistry first, and then you went to Carnegie Mellon was later,
Yes. It was
where you
after my
graduated.
military service. Yeah, to get my MBA.
That was smart. So you understood, so then you learned business, right?
Yes.
So you learned how to work in teams. I mean, probably in terms of being on a team, there's probably no greater experience. Well, in terms of leadership and being on a team, I mean, because you got to trust
Mhm.
the guy or gal next to you, basically. You
Yes,
know,
you got to work really well together,
yeah,
and you often get a lot of obstacles thrown in your way. And so being able to, have a plan A, B, and C. So there's a lot of it that I think is very applicable to the business world. Um,
right. You're
our
trying to get you
project,
have it.
especially IT projects, don't tend to go to according to plan.
Yeah, the difference is you could get shut down by somebody, but in your prior experience, you can really get shut down. God bless you.
Yeah, yeah, that's one way
So
to say
a
it.
little more risk there. So, but I found it interesting because I'm looking at the companies that you worked with. Your first company after being in the Army was you were a project manager at Wyeth, but then you became a director. You jumped pretty quick. Um, probably didn't feel it. Well, you were there 7 years as a project manager, then you became a director at Sharing Plow. So you've been and then you went to Bar, and then you went to, just throw some names out, Nycomed. How did you kind of get into this biotech world? Because I don't know a lot of people in that world. I think it's a really cool industry that you're in. How did that
So
happen?
as you mentioned, I had a degree in chemistry. At times I had flirted with the idea of getting my doctorate and focusing more on laboratory work. But coming out of my MBA program, I was looking at where could I use that experience. I enjoy the science. I enjoy learning the innovation that people do. So I pivoted me towards the pharmaceutical industry. So joining Wyeth, and then having the opportunity over time as the biotech rage was growing to get involved in that. And
gotcha.
So you worked in a variety of, big pharmaceuticals, generics, all sorts of dosage forms and delivery systems over my career.
So you were with the right background at the right time at the right place. It sounds like when biotech kind of took off.
Yeah, well, in the 90s, big pharma was the rage.
Yeah.
And that did very well. And then transitioning from that into biotech. So yes, I've been able to ride that well. And it's given me a lot of really interesting and fulfilling experiences.
But you weren't really an IT guy by training. You were a communications person and a business guy by training, right? And chemistry. So you had that. And so I'm looking at your background, and you really, it sounds like it looks like how you started was really getting projects done as a project leader.
I started, my first role was to implement laboratory systems in a vaccine manufacturer. So that actually is a pretty common career path for chemists. Like they get a little sick of doing the lab work, so they get put on an IT project, and then they're like, oh well, I like this, I'll keep doing this. So you find that quite a bit in the life sciences industry. And then I moved from the lab to manufacturing systems and then ERP. So it followed that. So I've spent about half my career working in the business and half in IT. And so, but, again, I think a lot of it is around that triangle that people talk about, people, process, technology.
Yeah.
How do you bring the three of them together? So as your earlier comments on my military career, the leadership, getting people to work together, defining what are our common goals, what's the win-win that we can take away from this. And then you had been mentioning earlier while we were chit-chatting around lessons learned is, you have to build a partnership if you're an IT leader with the business. What is the business trying to do to be successful? How can you help? And how can you make a win-win out of it? You always have to have that focus.
That's interesting. Well, I interview a lot of people, but you do have kind of that perfect triad. You've got the business, the technology, and the core. You actually understand the core product too, which is really unusual for people. They have to learn it, but you actually have the core background to understand that product. But then, I'm looking at your background. You did keep moving up as you kept moving. You went to Bar Laboratories as senior director. Now you kind of jumped to manufacturing and creation of the product, because then you went to senior director of quality and operation systems at Nycomed, right? So now you're not just doing IT, you're actually doing what I'm reading at quality and operation systems. Am I reading that right? That's like
so they were a generics manufacturer, and they made hundreds of different lotions, ointments, creams, and you run into in generics, it's all about speed to market. So how can we make our processes, our systems work more effectively, more efficiently, so we can drive to be first to market? That's the first mover in generics makes the lion's share of the profits.
Well, that's interesting, because the first mover doesn't always win. I mean, IBM is still, no. They've been in Watson, but they're infamous for coming out after they see the market develop and then just, okay, we're here. you know.
Yeah, I mean, well, generics, you're following the innovator. So the innovator drug is already on the market. You already
Yeah,
understand what the market is, and now you come in and you essentially price cut it, and
take
you
over.
so the
Take.
first one to show up gets all the movement from the people. Like, yeah, I like a lower priced option
Oh, I see what you're saying.
for the
That
same.
makes a
Yeah,
lot of sense. They come in and they just sort of take the market as soon as they can do that with the
yeah,
generics. That's interesting. And then finally you moved, I'll just real quickly finish this part of it. The thing that I found interesting, you were developing, you kept moving up the ranks, uh, and then you went into I can't even say the word,
Illumina. Yes.
Illumina, and you made a shift. Now you're director of analytics, and you're
Yeah,
really,
so I got the opportunity as part of what they call the factory of the future.
yeah.
So this idea of a broader factory from suppliers to customers of what how do we need to operate to be successful 2 years from now? And so I led the whole data analytics stream. So data and numbers, where you can see it from being a chemist and going to places like Carnegie Mellon, is a
Oh, right.
passion of mine. And how do I gain insights and knowledge from sifting through the data? And you see that more and more nowadays with AI and other well-known initiatives that are basically using data, collating the data at a speed that wasn't possible previously.
That's really interesting. I mean, you're right there at the cusp in this industry of where I got to think is like the hottest spot, because now you're CIO of this company, Abzena, and like you said, you take drugs through the process. Once the ladies and gentlemen in the lab coats figure something out, and you actually make it into a viable, marketable product, is what I'm hearing. Correct?
Yeah, so it's one thing to make it in a flask on the benchtop, as we would say, and then it's very different to make 2,000 liters of it day in and day out with the same consistency, the same quality, the same effectiveness. When you go to your local drugstore, you don't want to think about, well, how did they make this drug?
Yeah.
Your expectation is whether I got it at CVS or I went to Rite Aid, it's the same drug with the same quality, the same effectiveness. So that's a lot of what we drive. And then also along the way, there's a lot of different scientific techniques you can do to optimize things like yield or particular characteristics of the cells. So that's where data and AI actually plays quite a large part, because I can
Interesting.
spend a lot of time and money checking out a bunch of different options while the AI can home me in on here's the two most likely courses that will be successful.
Are you using
So,
AI for analysis today with your data?
yes, we have some research scientists. This is some part of our offerings as a company where we are using some AI machine learning models to help guide our development efforts. And as I was describing, cut the overall time for the scientific work to get the same, high value result.
That's interesting. Well, that goes back to what you were talking about, the business early, first one to market with a generic, right? Kind of
Well,
thing.
even with the innovator drug, I'm
The
spending
original
money the
drug.
whole development, the whole
Yeah.
clinical process, and most of these don't work out, don't get approved. So
Yeah.
if you can help me identify the winners, if you can help me move the winners along quicker, that has a huge financial return to it.
So that,
Both for the innovator company, but also for society. There's a lot of unmet medical need out there. And if you can get that therapy to these people sooner, that has a huge cost, a huge benefit to society.
well, I'm glad you said that, because at the end of the day, that's the business that you're actually in, right?
Is serving patients and solving it, more often than not, solving unmet medical needs. Yes.
That's wonderful. That's amazing. So, you got right on your LinkedIn profile, Office of the Future,
Yeah.
and not Office, I'm sorry, Factory of the Future. Sorry. You've got big science, big data, Factory of the Future. So how do you envision the future when you put all these things together? Because you're right, you really are right in the center of such a hot area. Plus, you've got the analytics, the science, the I can't even say the biotech. How do you envision this industry? How has it changed in the last 10 years, and how do you kind of see it changing in the future? Putting all that together.
Well, I think often Amazon is an example people talk about how they've
Yeah.
integrated a variety of sellers to a large audience of customers. They deliver their warehousing logistics arm is incredible with their ability to deliver, next day, almost
Oh, it's
anything,
amazing. Same day
anywhere in
sometimes.
the world.
Yeah.
So applying that to a scientific front is, and when we're talking about unmet medical need, and you talked about my time in Illumina, where you're studying genomics and genetics,
Yeah.
is we're driving towards individualized medicine. So I need to identify a patient who
Wow.
has a need, understand the patient at the genetic level, manufacture the therapy for them, and deliver it all within a very compressed timeline. I think that's the ultimate vision, that you're not just getting a serve everybody drug from CVS, but you're getting something tailored for Alex, for your particular genetics, your body chemistry, that is going to be the most effective option for you to meet your needs.
That vision that sounds amazing, actually. It's
Yeah,
almost
it would be, because you see this often, like you take cancer treatments
yeah.
where if you meet this profile, the drug works really well, like it cures you. If you don't, the drug doesn't do anything
I didn't know
except for
that.
make you sick, because you go through chemo and whatnot, and you have all the bad side effects. So if we can tailor that on a larger scale, if we can even, and talking about chemo, you get sick because chemo is very destructive to your body. So if I can
Yeah, I've heard that.
minimize the damage of the treatment, like the treatment shouldn't be worse than the disease. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for the tailoring of these things at a level, as our scientific knowledge is increased, that just was never possible before.
That's
And
unbelievable. Yeah. So what are you
and you
doing
think
there?
about, my comments about the quality, the efficacy of the
Yeah.
drugs, to be able to do that at a scale of one. Like you go by your Toyota, like the Toyota plant is, I think, a scale of 2 or 3 cars. So if you could drive that for the medicine, for the drugs, then I mean that is huge implications, not only for treatment but also costing, and because I'm not keeping inventory. I'm only making what I need.
Wow. You
Because
kind of blew me
there's a
away with that.
statistic. So
That's
just, look
yeah.
up how much like vaccines the states throw away because it went bad. Like we bought all these vaccines and we only used half of them, and like there's so much waste. And so the more I can remove from it, the more I don't even need to make the stuff in the first place unless I know I need it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's amazing. So now we back up, you're giving us the vision of the industry. How does that relate to your role? I mean, you're the CIO. Tell me how that all works.
Yeah, so IT, a lot of it is connecting the dots between the different business functions, the
Uh,
corporate strategic goals, and how are we going to use technology to help move that forward. So if you look at that vision, like the Amazon example,
yeah,
integrating directly with my suppliers, here's what I need, here's the quality of what I need, the manufacturing and laboratory operations, so that they know when are we going to manufacture this product and what would be required to do so, out to the logistics arm to get it to a pharmacy, a patient, so that they can be treated. So the IT group winds up being involved in a lot of different things. Scientific research generates a lot of data. And like we were just discussing, there's tools and technologies now for sifting through that data rapidly, for gaining difficult to find, what would have previously been difficult to find insights, and doing that on an integrated level. So Abzena's 3 sites in 2 countries.
yeah.
So you start with in the UK and research, and then we move it to the manufacturing plants in the US. And how can I do that seamlessly and have it, appear like we're all in the same place, even though we physically may not be? I mean, that's like us on the Teams call.
Yeah,
The technology can serve a lot of purposes.
man, you know your stuff. I mean, I listened to well, I listened to you, and you've got this incredible vision, but then you've been able to operationalize. You've helped
Yeah,
this
I
company
mean,
operationalize how to get all this done.
yeah,
That's
I think the use cases come up. Sometimes they're much simpler than you would
yeah,
imagine.
yeah.
As in, I'm trying to manufacture something in Pennsylvania. I have a problem, and I can get on a video call with the research scientists who develop the process, physically show them what I'm trying to do. Like that, these capabilities, like we take, FaceTime and WhatsApp for granted, but
Yeah.
it brings a huge amount of capability. And then you add virtual reality and like the goggles, then I don't even need to be holding the phone to interact with the scientist. They can see what
Are
I'm
you
seeing.
are you
And
doing that now? Are you doing twinning and all that where you're in the environment?
not at Abzena. We did quite a bit of that at Illumina,
Uh,
especially during like the lockdown. So supporting the various laboratories around the world that were using the instrumentation. So having the support tech who's in the lab, wear the goggles, and then all the supporting individuals could join the call and watch what they're
could
doing.
do you see because one of my favorite authors, God bless him, he's gone, is Michael Crichton or Mike,
Hmm.
and he wrote about this
Hmm.
in what was the movie that
Like
and
the
it
70s,
came
yeah.
well, yeah, he wrote about this, and now I kind of visualize what you're saying is where you could have different people virtually working together is what you're actually saying. So you're all are starting to, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Now,
I mean, you think about if I was going to try to describe to you how to jumpstart your car. So
yeah,
then it's like, we'll take the red cable and attach it to the red. Well, you probably open the hood on your car and there's more than one red thing. And then, like,
yeah,
did you need this one or that one? Like, the ability to see exactly what you're doing adds a layer of error proofing that's incredible. Um, well, they always say that pictures worth 1,000 words. So
yeah.
in many of these tech support, customer support instances, adding the video it makes a tremendous amount of benefit to really understand what's going wrong.
Yeah, well,
um
now that I'm hearing what you're saying, you've got your manufacturing process trying to duplicate what they did in the lab, and then you could literally
yes.
get on in a virtual call with these folks and show them what you're doing, and they, oh no, this is what you do, kind of
Right.
thing.
And
Just
but also for like new employee orientation, training events that I can have an expert on a topic train people that way. I can, add text, images into the field of vision of
yeah,
the individual. So the capability goes well beyond just me being able to see exactly what you're looking at. I can aid you in many ways. I can add, the laser pointer in your field of vision to point out, no, this is where I want you to look or touch.
that's amazing. If we go back and look at career, career, you've already mentioned a number of lessons learned. I mean, I think the most important one was you from your, I got to tell you, from your Army experience, the teamwork part. You mentioned
Hmm.
the importance of teamwork and where you learned that. And then also understanding the core business. You mentioned the importance of understanding the core business. And for you, understanding the core business was actually understanding chemistry. If you
Yeah,
think about it,
my background in that has helped a lot.
yeah,
It's not insurmountable that people can learn this, but I also just have that innate curiosity about, what are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? And learning the literal science behind the products and what we do. So that
that's interesting.
curiosity, but I think all great leaders have this thirst for knowledge and curiosity of always learning something.
Yeah, I think so too. I think so too. But the balance is okay, there's time to keep learning, and there's time to doing also.
Yes.
So how do you strike that balance? How do you know? Like, okay, we've learned enough. Get this one out the door, you know.
Yeah, I mean that's a leadership challenge too. What
Yeah,
is good enough? Is
yeah,
70% done, 80% done? So I think that's another thing through experience, through ensuring you have the right stakeholders and they're in a venue where they feel empowered to speak their mind and raise concerns and or like, I think we're good, let's go sort of comments. And so culture is another lesson learned of fostering a culture of learning, fostering a culture of openness where people feel that they can challenge others, that they can speak their mind, ask questions. That helps the productivity of the team greatly.
I can imagine. Now, one last thing I want to ask you about. You got all these different teams that you're clearly working with, right? And you've got these I gotta believe there's in your first part of your career after the Army was project management. So really you learned how to work with people, right? That's what that really is, right? Working with people to get things done.
Yes.
So now you fast forward to today, and I gotta believe you have some people with some, I want to say this in a nice way, strong egos. I mean, you got inventors of like stuff that's going
Yes.
to save cancer or solve cancer. Now they want to do it their way. How do you kind of balance all that? I'm just curious because
Yeah. So that's a big lesson learned with project management is never underestimate how much work is involved in change management and getting people on board, having them go through the norming, storming, forming stages.
uh,
And it is common enough that you challenge well-held beliefs. Like we've always done it this way. This is how it works, and those are very, very challenging situations to be in. But humans don't like change happening to them, but they're much
no,
more open when they're part of the change. So again, empowering people, having them part of it, having them feel they are allowed to speak up and question helps a lot. But yeah, you have to put the energy and time in to bring people along and to spend time not necessarily on hardcore work activities where you're really building the team and getting to know each other. That's the challenge of this virtual environment is you don't have the casual conversations at the coffee machine or over lunch that you would have if you're all in the office, or as we used to do is you rent a trailer and you put the whole project team in the trailer.
oh really?
Yeah. That's a
Well, I do a lot of virtual meetings now myself, and I actually work at just doing silly chit chat up front.
yeah.
It
Yeah, you
sounds
have to
like
work at it.
you kind of work at it, but it doesn't feel like work. It's fun. I actually enjoy talking to
Mhm.
people like yourself. And I think it does help. But there is something to being in the same room. It's our senses take over and you can experience something that's a little different. It's a different thing. So, like you said, I think it is you get to know someone when you're working in a trailer, I imagine, over a two,
Yeah.
3 week period. You know,
Yeah, some of it goes back to my earlier comments of
yeah,
just observing how you're performing the tasks, observing how you're trying to perform the tasks under the new system or the
yeah,
new way of working, and having that mutual opportunity to see what works and where could we make further improvements.
that's great. So let's get, any other lessons learned that you want to share, and then we'll talk about areas you like to help people with. Any other big ones you want to?
I'm a big one on coaching and mentoring, except for especially the younger staff. So we brought up a point when we were chit chatting at the beginning of this
Yeah.
of like, younger folks often they just start playing around with the app. They just try different things, and then you and I are there like, well, how'd you get it to do that? Like letting people work and experiment in the way that works the best for them and helping them then I don't know, polish that so that so they're They know how to interact with people of different generations. I think that's another great lesson learned, that find out what people are comfortable with, help them with it, but then also stretch them in directions that they might not have gone on their own with support.
That's a really good insight. I mean, right now, I think I heard this one like 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, but we have 5 or 6 generations of people working together. And we all know that every generation is a little different. So, being able to bridge people on a team together, I like that insight. So the insight is let them work kind of the way they want to, but then move them towards, a little higher level, whatever that means for them. That's kind of what I heard.
Yeah, to me, it's like a different angle on diversity. So we have a
Yeah.
diversity of ways of working. So embrace it.
Oh,
Don't
I
say
like
like
that.
you got to look, Alex, I want you to look at the problem exactly the way I do. No, I want you to look at it differently, because you very often see something I miss.
Yeah, and there's creativity. That's how creativity could occur. Well, that's interesting. Well, I mean, when you were in the Army, it was everybody was in the Army, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
you
and you
really learn to
often
work with
had like the
different kinds
one
of.
way you did something, and there wasn't really much
That's different.
leeway on it. Yes.
Well, that's interesting because a lot of people say you can't work like that today, like the business world, but in some situations it does have to be like that, where it's like, hey, this is how we got to get it done. And in a situation like you're in the Army, it does have to work like that. That is an appropriate leadership model for some situations, and I would say in that situation where it's like
Yeah.
we're gonna take this piece of ground, everybody's gonna be on the same team.
Yeah, I think anything related to safety, you need to follow the practices, the rules. That there should not be room for negotiating on it. Some HR related topics also.
Yeah,
So I do think there's quite a bit. And then in a regulated industry like life sciences, when you're making the drug, yeah, there's one way that you should be doing it. We need to be pretty rigid on that. It's not like baking a cake where I can embellish a little and
man, you got a lot to manage there. It's great.
yeah.
So in your profile that you created with us on your landing page with us, and if you haven't checked it out, everybody, make sure you go to the Board of Advisors. You want to get in touch with Dave, go to our site, technologyexecutivesclub.com, go to Board of Advisors, look up Dave. He's right there. Make sure you click on his picture and you'll see, and there's a link right to him on LinkedIn. And you talk about areas you'd like to help people, or specialties of areas interested of strategic transformation,
Yeah.
team building, coaching, development, and of course, data analytics, data science, and AI, and life sciences IT, which I think the whole thing of life sciences IT is, and that vision you gave us is super cool. But strategic transformations, I don't know if I heard, maybe you mentioned that. How do you envision like strategic transformations? How do you go about doing that? Like, has that been a big role that you've done in these different companies where you've helped them transform their manufacturing process or their develop? I mean, tell us a little about that, like lessons learned on that one.
Yeah, so we have a saying in the industry, like if it's not documented, it didn't happen. So you often create a lot of paperwork to document what I'm doing, whether it's in the laboratory or manufacturing. So a lot of the vision is moving to electronic, doing review by exception, having the systems be a checker of your work and understanding. So we always involved in another iteration of this, of how do we get there? What are the steps along the way? What are so the milestones? So we're generating benefits along the way. So no, we didn't talk about it earlier in this conversation, but I think that applies across industries. Is how is IT a strategic partner to the business? What investments should we be making around technology that are going to help achieve the business's goals? And what does that look like?
That's great. And then when you look,
that's a sort of like 90s view of IT too, is, well, you just spend a lot of money and we have no idea what any of it does except for email. I understand email,
yeah, funny. Well, you have mentioned multiple times about partnering with the business in this conversation. So you actually have. So, but what I find interesting with you, and I think that's a lesson for anyone watching this, at the core, you really understand this business. You understand the roots of this business. And I think one thing that, someone watching this could say, well, I can't get a degree in with this and whatever. If you're working at Ford or something, what am I going to do? I mean, you could be curious. You actually gave them the clue.
Yeah.
Be curious. You don't have to have a degree to learn something. You can go out, especially today, everything's online. You just have to go after it and learn it. And there's so many certifications out there. Now, team building, coaching, and development. So you said you like helping people with that. That's great. And of course, data analytics, data science, and AI. I think it's fascinating. You are probably in one of the hottest areas in the industry, if not the world right now. That's great. So if anybody wants to connect with Dave, go right on the profile, connect with Dave. Dave, is there anything you want to add in terms of not only lessons learned, but areas you like to help people with?
No, I think we covered it. Everybody's challenges are almost a bit unique, and glad to sit down and have a conversation and see where I can help you along the way or nudge in a good direction.
That sounds great. Well, I appreciate that. Can't wait to see the vision. I'm hoping around to see it. God bless it. Knock on wood, because it sounds pretty cool. Listen, when I was a kid, my grandmother or grandfather in Lubbock, Texas, took me to a cafeteria, and it was the cafeteria where on the wall, you could pretty much get whatever you wanted. It's that old-fashioned cafeteria, and they had the kitchen in the back, and you would just go in. Listening to it described like that, it's like, okay, I need this drug. I could just plug it in, and then it's going to come out. It's almost like Star Trek, right? Where they say, here's the food that I want. And, I want meatloaf. Here comes the meatloaf. Nobody but me is going to ask for meatloaf, but I like meatloaf. But I think that's pretty cool. Anyways, David, I started off, namaste. Thank you so much. We appreciate you being part of the board of advisors. Super cool. A lot of insights, a lot of wisdom here. Thank you for that. So people reach out to Dave, and thank you, Dave, for being part of the group.
You're welcome. Thank you, Alex. You all have a great one.